personal and impersonal mind. All nature is vibrant with the presence of being, bursting into expression in the flowering bush, the flitting butterfly, the flaming sunrise, and the raging torrent. Each thing is being, clothing itself in its own ideas. It is God's thought expressed in the language of form and beauty and sustained by the presence of the Spirit embodied in it. We cannot, if we would, get away from the fact that being acts as a self in each individual thing and person. For all is one, and therefore this one must be in each individual thing. The distinction between persons and things largely disappears in the light of the allness of being and becomes merely a difference in the type, purpose, or self-consciousness of the varied forms, whether plant, animal, or man. Each of us has a mind which acts in two ways, personal and impersonal. The personal mind each of us is familiar with. This is the mind that chooses, intellectualizes, and wills. It selects the objects of its desire and plans and purposes that it will do. It conceives ideas and insists on their fulfillment. In the individual, this aspect of mind is often spoken of as objective, while the impersonal side of mind is often spoken of as subjective. The baby is born into the world practically subjective, that is, acting without conscious thought or choice. But so soon as the child begins to react to environment, it needs an individualization of mind to meet life's emergencies. When it learns that a cry will give it nourishment, a yell will give it a rattle, and the word papa will give it anything, it has begun the development of an objective mind. This is the mind which we are all familiar in the sprightly intercourses of life, wherein man plans, works, and struggles. On the other hand, there is an activity of mind in each of us which may be classed as impersonal. It is to be discovered in the unconscious process by which we govern the breathing, the circulation of the blood, the birth of new life cells, and the rejection of old ones, which we pass automatically through the pores of the body, the kidneys, and so on. It is the phase of mind that acts while we sleep, standing guard at the ear to open it to the incoming of some sound and to close it to others. The peaceful ticking of the clock, the rattle of the window pane, or the familiar snore of your companion, it gracefully turns away from our conscious attention. But should a burglar pry at the window or one of the children cry for water, at once the subjective mind opens the doorway of the conscious attention, and we are aroused from our slumbers. This is the mind that can hear without ears and see without eyes, as has been abundantly proven in recent years by experiments of various kinds. Messages can be conveyed to it and from it to other minds without the aid of mechanical agencies, by the process of what is known as thought transference or mental telepathy. Apparently, everything that ever enters the storehouse of its memory is kept there without loss, although it may never again step out onto the threshold of objective consciousness. Here we scatter the seeds of our ambitions and ideas, and in the rich soil of the mind, these ideas take root and grow into purposes and plans. Whatever falls upon the rich soil of this mind is bound to bear fruit of some kind, for with tireless activity, it goes to work to think out for us the things we are puzzling over, to show us the best way to go, to act both as teacher and servant for us. It is significant that this is the mind that has charge of all growth, whether it be in the budding and bloom of genius, in the development of full-rounded purpose, or in the reconstruction of the body through the creation of new cells. But just why do we call it impersonal? We call it impersonal because it is not the phase of mind that chooses what shall come to pass. The personal mind chooses what it shall have and then passes its orders over to the impersonal mind to execute. In the individual, this is well illustrated in the case of a hypnotized person. In this state, the subject loses his consciousness of personality and takes on the personality of the operator. Instead of making selections of ideas for himself, he takes whatever idea is given to him and begins to act upon that. If he is told that he is a great singer, he tries to sing. If told that he is a great sculptor, he tries to mould and chisel. If told that on the following day at 12:01 he will pull out his watch and wind it, he takes that idea, and the next day, to his own personal astonishment, the impersonal mind carries out the idea that was impressed upon it, and he winds his watch in the public market or wherever he may chance to be. However, we must not make the mistake of conceiving of a personal mind apart from the impersonal, for the personal can arise into individuality only out of the impersonal, and to conceive of a personal separate from the impersonal would lead us to attempt to accomplish things by human will and force alone, and this again would lead to a universe of many minds, God's mind and each of ours, and thus to eternal conflicts of purpose and consequent turmoil. Back of all personal expressions of life must be that from which they spring, and as being, from its very nature of being, that which is, must be one, the impersonal life of the individual must share in that being or life, and the personal life of each of us must rest eternally back on the one source of all. We can find illustrations of the direct relationship of the individual forms of life and the universal in plants, animals, and man. I think, however, that science has never had so startlingly proof of what metaphysics has long taught as can be found in the trained horses of Elberfeld. I confess that I cannot write of them without such a thrill as one experiences only in presence of a great mystery, for though science has admitted that these horses actually do perform the wonders which I relate, still we must recall that the back of everything we know is as great a mystery as the face of everything we do not know. The horses in question were trained by a man named Kral, and the geniuses of their performances is attested by an imposing list of leading scientists of several countries. Various theories have been advanced as to the source of the intelligence of these animals, but no reputable scientists now question the fact of the intelligence itself. The facts are these. A system of numbers is arranged in such a way that the horses will know that a certain number of blows with the foot will represent each figure. For instance, following the English method of numbers, 24 would be represented first by 2 blows and then by 4. A certain number of blows also represents each letter of the alphabet, so that the horse can spell out any word that he may desire. With this simple machinery of language and without the aid of a voice, the horses perform prodigies of intelligence that are more than marvellous. Asked to multiply 24 by 7, for example, the horse will strike out the reply with instantaneous quickness and apparently without any conscious calculation. The horses have been taught how to extract the square root of numbers and can extract it instantly from any number that gives an exact root. Not only this, but also without having been taught to solve any number beyond the square root of 144. The horses can extract the cube root of any number and even the fourth root. When Maurice Maeterlinck visited the stables at Elberfeld, he was introduced by Kral to Mohammed, one of the horses, and the horse was asked to spell Maeterlinck's name, which he accomplished with little difficulty. To prove that there was no collusion on account of a previous knowledge of his visit, Maeterlinck remained with Mohammed alone and asked him to spell the name of his hotel, Weidenhof. This the animal did. One day Zarif, another of the horses, suddenly stopped in the midst of his lessons. They asked him the reason. "Because I am tired." Another time he answered, "Pain in my leg." One day, Kral and his collaborator, Dr. Scheller, thought that they would try to teach Mohammed to express himself in speech. The horse, a docile and eager pupil, made touching and fruitless efforts to reproduce human sounds. Suddenly, he stopped and, in his strange phonetic spelling, declared by striking his foot on the springboard, "I have not a good voice." Observing that he did not open his mouth, they strove to make him understand by the example of a dog with pictures, and so on, that in order to speak, it is necessary to separate the jaws. They next asked him, "What must you do to speak?" He replied by striking his foot, "Open the mouth." They asked him, "Why don't you open yours?" He replied, "Because I can't." I thus quote directly from Maeterlinck's unknown guest because he personally examined the case of the horses and because, after a study of all theories, he comes to the conclusion that the horses are the instrument through which a vaster intelligence articulates. The theory of signs imperceptible to the onlooker had to be abandoned because one of the horses, Berto, is blind and could not detect such signs. Nor is it what we call mental telepathy, for as Maeterlinck amusingly relates, he himself did not know the answer to some of the problems he proposed, while examining the horse alone in the stable, and more than that, he never had known, and did not even know. How then could the horse read it from his mind? Other experiments also have been made to show that it is not telepathy. Maeterlinck comes to the conclusion that we can attribute the almost superhuman intelligence of the horses only to a subliminal consciousness which is in touch with the immediate answer to every problem. Like the mathematical prodigies of history, who have been able to calculate numbers without the aid of rules and by some immediate process, the horses seem to read the answer from some cosmic page. Such an explanation seems also necessary to explain the quickness which they exhibit in learning words and their meanings, for in a few weeks they learn what a child must take a long time to acquire in the use of language. Maeterlinck concludes that either we must attribute to the horse an intelligence which challenges belief as beyond that of ordinary human powers, or else we should have to admit that there is in the horse, and hence most probably in everything that lives on this earth. A psychic power similar to that which is hidden beneath the veil of our reason, and which, as we learn to know it, astonishes, surpasses and dominates our reason more and more. This psychic power, in which no doubt we shall one day be forced to recognize the genius of the universe itself, appears, as we have often observed, to be all-wise, all-seeing and all-powerful. It has, when it is pleased to communicate with us, or when we are allowed to penetrate into it, an answer for every question and perhaps a remedy for every ill. I have not quoted here in order to establish Maeterlinck's opinion as an authority, but I have presented the facts as he found them, and the reader can judge for himself. For my part, I see here but another evidence of the truth that there is but one mind functioning through many individuals, expressing in many things, embodying in many ideas. This is simply another of those scientific evidences of the principles of mental science which are daily coming to hand. The individualized mind, forgetful of its origin, engrossed in the affairs and complications of an objective world, loses its consciousness of the all-embracing wisdom and seldom floats to the surface the pure ideas from the profound and placid depths. Yet there come moments in life when some storm smites the surface and we quiver to the depth of our being. It is then that pure intuitions come to us, and we see with startling vision, we know with supernatural clearness, we understand without the process of reason. Something rises up within us to take possession, leading us out of peril, giving us the strength of madness, inspiring us to the necessary action, acting as the creative genius and the ruling spirit that masters every power that threatens. And woe to that man or society that stands in the path of the God-inspired soul, for he announces divinity, and in him God himself is marching onwards to his triumph. We are thus brought face to face with the great mystery, God in man, or as a great seer once said, Christ in you, the hope of glory. Thus, by plunging beneath the surface of his ordinary consciousness, man finds that he does not enter another sea, for he finds no break between the surface and the profoundest depths. He is related to the all, not by proximity nor contact, but in actual nature and being. Man does not leave off where God begins. If he will but realize this and seek to establish relationship in conscious thought, where alone separation of any kind is possible, he cannot but feel and know that back of him is the power and the life of the all, and that he is entitled to act as the personal factor within that life. In other words, as it stands back of us as the impersonal basis of our own life, it is our right and privilege to impress upon it the ideas and desires which our own personal life demands. And since it takes each idea and goes to work to produce in visible form the invisible thought which has been given it, we may be sure that it cannot fail to bring forth for us whatever we may desire. Thus do we have outlined for ourselves the principle of mind. There is one universal, all-comprehensive mind, having the power to choose what it shall create and to initiate its own ideas, and thus to act as a personal self, while at the same time it is an impersonal force or creative energy building for us whatsoever things we ask in faith, believing. For as we are in this one mind and our own individuality arises from it, we may make personal choices of what we shall have, and it will body them forth for us. one may well rest back in a sense of quiet security upon the assurance that these truths afford. Let us say, I am one with the infinite intelligence, and the infinite energy is back of every word I speak and every desire that I voice. I may ask what I will in the name of my inner and real self, and it shall be done unto me of my Father. Father, I will that thou shalt open to me the storehouses of a diviner wisdom, that I may walk in the pathway of truth and learn more to enjoy the companionship of the ever-present One, whom thou art. Songs of the Silence. I am thy life within thee. I am thy health. I am thy choicest treasure. I am thy wealth. I am thy deepest wisdom. I am thy light. I am thy power within thee. I am thy might. I am thy warm emotion. I am thy truth. I am thy ageless heritage. I am thy youth. I am thy hope of heaven. I am the way. I am the light eternal. I am the day. I am thy will to conquer. I am thy sword. I am the peace thou cravest. I am thy word. I am the inner presence, forever nigh. Whenever thou dost say, I am that I.